Good afternoon, dear students. I hope you are all doing well. This is teacher Maria Milagros, and in this video, you will find the content of our third economics lesson, which is titled Trade and Economic Flow. The ones that went to school or were connected to our Zoom session already know what I'm talking about, but in case you weren't able to join or in case you just want to review the content, again, I am going to explain everything we saw in class. So let's begin. First of all, we discussed two companies, two American companies, the first one being Uber and the second being Airbnb. In case you don't know, Uber is a transportation company that offers rides, like taxis do, to people who are interested in the service. And Airbnb, on the other hand, is a lodging company, and they work as a hotel. However, what they use is the homes of people who are willing to rent either a house or an apartment or a room within their houses or apartments or even just a couch. The platform connects both providers, the people who want to give up their space for rent, and the people who are seeking the service or a place to stay. So even though it might be hard to believe, if you were asked, for example, what do you think these companies focus on? Well, you would say probably like they provide a service or they are platforms that are meant to connect people. But in truth, both companies focus on trade, even it might sound weird or if it's hard to believe. So to start, see that this has a moon, therefore it needs to be copied in your notebook. We will consider trade simply as an exchange. If you recall, we already saw trade last year when we studied how money came to be. We said that first of all, we had bartering. When people didn't have money, what they did was they traded, they exchanged objects that had some sort of similar value. And after that system got too complicated because you needed to find someone who actually needed what you had to offer, or if not, you had to trade with someone else in order to then go to the person with whom you actually needed to trade. That was very complicated. So then money evolved, and that is how we had studied trade last year. In here, we will only consider trade as an exchange. That means giving up something for something else. It's always going to be reciprocal. If you don't receive anything in exchange for what you're giving, then that's not a trade, and vice versa. Then we're going to consider these two companies. Be mindful of the moons, remember. You have to copy the slides with the moons. In this case, you can only copy the one in bold, negritas. Then we're going to consider these two companies, both headquartered in San Francisco. The first is Uber and the second is Airbnb. Uber is a company that operates a mobile app-based transportation network. And here are how things work. So imagine that you need a ride, you need transportation from your home to the airport, and you do not want to take your car, or you simply don't have a car. And you have another person who does have a car, who is nearby you, who need to ride. And this person with a car is willing and able to drive the person to the airport for a fee. That means in Spanish, tarifa, for a small payment. Well, it doesn't have to be small, but a payment. So Uber takes a percentage of the dollar transaction between driver and rider. So that is how they generate profit. It's not like the platform is going to be free, even though most of the money goes to the driver. Uber takes a percentage of that transaction. So in a way, you could say that Uber is a taxi company, but owns no taxis. None of this is property belonging to Uber. The platform is the only thing that they own. On the other hand, we have Airbnb, which is essentially a website. And here are how things work at this website. So one person wants to rent a room in a house or an entire house or a couch in the living room of someone's house for a night and for a given period of time, okay? A night, a week, maybe more. You have this one person. And then you have another person who has a room or a house or a couch in their living room and is able and willing to accommodate this person. So what Airbnb essentially does is put these two people in contact with each other. They connect these two people that need each other to do business. So what does the platform make out of this? What's their earning? Well, they keep a percentage, again, like Uber does, of that transaction. Airbnb charges a fee. They do not do it for free. So in a way, you could say that Airbnb is a hotel, but owns no rooms. They have the same structure. However, the houses and the accommodations are not theirs. Now, what many people think when first learning about Uber and Airbnb is to ask themselves, why didn't I think of that? It is such a good idea to start your own taxi business, but you don't have to put the money to buy taxis, or to start your own hotel business, but you don't have to spend any money on infrastructure, building, housekeeping, employees. So it is a really good idea, or both are very good ideas. What you need to consider is that they weren't accepted at the start. In fact, one of the companies was founded in 2009 and the other in 2008, and they got popular only in recent years. So you need to consider that these concepts were so innovative that they weren't accepted. They were viewed as weird. It's like, how are you going to pay to stay in the house of someone else, sleeping in their couch with no privacy at all, and you're willingly going to pay money for that? A few years ago, that was completely shocking. No one would have paid for that. However, now it's a very popular industry. Same with Uber. How are you going to hire someone who isn't a worker of a taxi line, who you don't know who they are? How are you going to get in the car of someone who you don't know in order to take you somewhere? It's very fishy. But in recent years, again, it has become one of the most profitable industries in the world. So what must the founders of Uber and Airbnb have been thinking that others didn't? What crossed their minds that people before them hadn't thought? Or maybe people had thought of that idea, but they didn't have the resources to implement it. So what's the idea? And this slide, you're going to copy everything. Whether they knew it or not, they were thinking about exchange or trade, either consciously or unconsciously. Why? As we stated earlier, exchange or trade is when you give up something to receive something else, right? That's our concept. So in the case of Uber, one person is giving up money. There's an exchange of money for a ride to the airport, but the other person is giving up something as well. This person is giving up his time and his car to drive the first person to the airport. What do they receive? Money. So see that both give up and both receive. The person who needs the ride is giving up money, and he or she receives a ride. The other person, the person with the car, is giving up something, his time and his car. But they also receive. What do they receive? Money. And the same structure is replicated by Airbnb. You have one person giving up money and they're receiving a stay in a particular place for a period of time. The other person, the owner of that place, is giving up the occupancy of that place for a period of time in exchange of something, and that something is money. So there is an exchange. It's just not a service for money. Both parties involved give up something in order to receive something in return. And this one, you're going to copy it completely as well. What Uber and Airbnb essentially do is bring people who want to trade with each other together. This is what was so new and what was so innovative about them. They knew, at least in the case of Uber, that there were people who wanted to be transported from one location to another, and that you also have other people who want to do that transporting. Maybe the people who do the transporting are unable to work for a taxi company because they already have other jobs or whatever, but they are interested in joining the service. So what Uber does is bring these two sets of people together. Then you have Airbnb. They know that there are people who want to rent, instead of a hotel room, which is kind of expensive, or a house. Sorry, no, forget about the house, only the hotel. Or maybe something bigger, you know, like a resort that is very expensive. So Airbnb knows that there are people who want to rent, instead of that, a room or a house someplace, imagine Miami Beach, for a day or a week or 2 weeks. And they also know that there are other people who want to rent out their own room or house or couch in Miami Beach for a day or a week or 2 weeks. And what Airbnb does is bring these two sets of people together. And this is how it is exemplified through a diagram. You have one circle with a group number 1, and we're going to call that group number 1 consumers, people who need the service. In the case of Uber and Airbnb, the people who want the ride and the people who want to stay somewhere. On the other side, on the right side, I think I said right earlier and I meant left. So sorry if I did say right. Now, in the right side, we have group number 2, who are the service providers. In our case, the people who own their transportation means, and the people who own the houses, the rooms, the couches, and who offer them for rent. So see that what is in the middle, let me turn on the pointer for this. What is in the middle, connecting these group with these group and vice versa, these group to this group, is a platform. This is what they do. This is what is so new about it, because if they wanted to trade with each other before, they needed to go directly. And sometimes you're not able to have that link if you're outside of a company or an institution. So these two took advantage of that and said, we are the ones who are going to connect this two groups. And this is why it became so popular, because you're talking to another person, regular person, not a company, not an organization, not an institution. You're simply dealing and making business with someone else that is like you. So to go back to our question, how does one come up with the Uber or Airbnb ideas? The thing is that both ideas have to do with trying to answer this question. How do I bring people together, people who want to trade with each other, but who are not currently trading with each other at the moment? And that is a question that they asked themselves and that they answered, even though the first is related to transportation and the second relates to lodging. Both answered these questions in their own ways. Sorry. We said in class, we gave many examples because there are other instances, other situations where people who want to trade with each other are just waiting to be brought together. Think, for example, of platforms like Mercado Libre or Amazon, or we spoke about platforms here in Caracas who you are able to, or through which you are able to, for example, hire a doctor, hire a tow truck, that means una grúa, in which you're able to get a technician to come to your house. Even if you don't know anyone, you log into that platform and you are able to find a professional to help you. And like that, many other examples of platforms that use this model of business and who are extremely successful, because what they do is that they connect people who want to trade with each other, but that don't belong to an enterprise or a company. So maybe, well, I'm sure there are many other instances where people are just waiting for a platform to emerge and connect them. Last but not least, you're going to copy this flow chart in your notebook. We're going to explain it better next week, which is going to be our class, but this relates to economic flow. Economic flow means how resources, goods and services and money move in a simple economy. That is why you have this, the long official title is this one: Flow of Goods, Services, Resources, Money Payments in a Simple Economy. And what they do, or what this does, is that it exemplifies how an economy is able to remain stable. As you can see, we have two parts, or two parties, or two main characters. We have businesses and we have households. Remember, households are family units, people who live together in the same house and were usually related. So first of all, we have businesses, and businesses have two tasks. Remember that every time we have an exchange, you both give and receive. And this is what we're going to find for the two of them. What do businesses give? Okay, they provide goods and services to consumers. What do they receive in exchange? They receive resources, inputs provided by households, and they use them. So they give and they receive. On the other hand, we have households. The first task associated to households is number one, what do you receive? You receive and therefore you consume final goods and services produced by businesses and other services. And what do you give? You provide productive inputs to businesses. Then, as you can see here, there are plenty of arrows. We have two sets of arrows here, and we have another set right here. And that is how this moves. As you can see, there are two arrows coming off households, and that means that money payments for consumer goods and services go from households to businesses. But households also provide economic resources, land, labor, capital to businesses. They provide two things: money payments and economic resources. And from businesses to households, we also have a flow, as you can see here, like this. What do businesses give households? Consumer goods and services, and money payments for resources, rent, wages, salaries, interest, and profit. Why? Because businesses have workers who are members of households. So, for example, where your parents pay for the school, a household, your family, is providing a money payment for the service of education. They're giving the money from household to business. However, us teachers who work at the school, we are receiving the money payments for resources, rents, wages, salaries. What resource specifically? My labor. I provide my labor to the business, and in exchange, the business gives me or us money payments in exchange for that. So as you can see, this is a never-ending flow, and this is how, in a simple economy, resources are able to flow within a country. So you need to have this in your notebook because we're going to work with this next week. Then, if there are any questions, doubts, things that you didn't understand, remember that you can send me an email via Academia, or you can ask me next class and I will gladly reply. Please remember to have the content up to date in your notebook. That's the only thing you need to do this week. And see you around in our next class. Take care, guys.